I was looking at all of your stuff that you've done. It's like amazing. I'm
It's,
like, okay, the brother ape was so old, but you know, really unbelievable. But I know we need to get started on this. So, but as we get started, I have to ask you because I know your dad was a professional baseball player. He
Mhm,
did play with the Phillies, I think, at some point.
mhm.
And so I got to ask you because you know it's big deal here. What do you
Of
think
course.
about the World Series? Who are you predicting to win?
Well, listen, I'm rooting for the Phillies, obviously. That goes without saying. We don't even have to discuss that part of it. There's some other people out there running around on the field trying to catch balls and whatnot. We're not going to talk about them. Uh,
Right, exactly. Except that I think it's the Marlins, isn't it? The Marlins, and I know it's the LA Dodgers in the actually in the World Series. So
it's the Marlins and the Dodgers. Look, in that contest, I have to say, I've never been to a Marlins game. I've been to some Dodgers games. I used to live out that way. So I got a bunch of friends that are hardcore Dodgers fans. Um,
right,
I'm wishing the Dodgers the best in that contest.
yeah, I think I am too. They need to win tonight. Anyway, now that that's over, good Lord Bird, you know the character that you play is so appropriate not only for this particular movie but just for you and the types of characters that you always play, those sort of semi dark but very pivotal types of characters. Tell me about this role and what excited you about it.
It was just, I think, exciting to hear somebody talk about what it was like to transfer information, like how the Underground Railroad really worked. You hear so much about it, growing up as a young Black kid, but you never get any insight into it.
Right.
So, I was just like, wait. So the way letters moved was there was a train and it was a steam train and it only went 15, 20 miles an hour. So it took days for a letter to get. Oh, wow. Okay. Just
Right.
processing what it means to take cotton from razor blade leaves, right? The
Mhm.
skill required to do that and the value of the product once you did that, right? So I just feel like when you look at these things in that way, they come to life in a different way, and you get to see a different part of your ancestors that nobody ever told you about, and that's one where they weren't victims, and ones
Mhm.
where they weren't just laying down taking it, and they didn't spend every day of their life getting their butt kicked. Um, they had goals, they had plans, they had strategies, they were navigating in all types of different systems,
Mhm.
using skills that we could use right now.
Oh, okay. Seriously, you know, we now have the internet, but if you really think about what you just said was so important and poignant, because these people didn't have all of that. But
No,
what they had were tools that were strong enough to really liberate an entire race of people over a period of time. That's basically
absolutely.
what happened.
Absolutely. And there's so much to learn from them. And we don't get taught that in schools. They tell us about Columbus. They don't tell us 1,500 years before Columbus showed up here, the Olmecs were here with the Aztecs, and that the people who settled this North American land are actually all Black people and brown people and people of Spanish descent. And then Columbus showed up here, and then you said founding fathers, and that, okay, that's great. But that's not what it is. That's not history. That's completely false. So, it's unfortunate that we're still, talking about the same figures during Black History Month every year. So you never learn about the railman, you know,
Right.
you never learn about the general, and you never really get to understand how they actually did it. Like when somebody says escape from slavery, that ain't no detail. Like how?
Yeah. Right.
What did you do exactly?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, you know, you hear because we all grew up, if we were lucky and went to school, you heard about the Underground Railroad. But again, like you said, you had no idea. Okay, so did somebody go down into, some little door or something, and then they got on a train? I mean, what was that?
Who dug it? What was it? I mean, and here it is in something like The Good Lord Bird, written by a Black author who isn't playing short shrift to any of the characters, not even the white character. He's embracing all of the characters. He's telling a really broad story. But here we meet that the Underground Railroad was the horse and carriage that followed the steam train at night when it's stopping every 15 minutes to pick up water, and that there's a whole system happening there in order for that to happen. So I feel like telling stories that showcase us and our history and our brilliance and our excellence. We say these words, but we act like that means 2020 and forward. No, there's plenty of excellence and beauty and majesty and magic and entrepreneurship and brilliance to be celebrated. So I'm just, anytime I get an opportunity, particularly with, someone like Ethan, who I think is absolutely a kindred spirit as an artist, an absolute storyteller, and also as a person who, who comes from a certain integrity and a certain history as a human being, right? So it's important to him to tell those types of stories. So collaborating with this type of group of people, the Steve Zahns and Keith Davids and David Digg, there's so many, Natasha Marks, there's so many wonderful, wonderful artists in this petition, Rafael Casal. It was kind of like a no-brainer. I'm just excited to talk to artists like, people like yourself about it, because I'm hoping people get a chance to see it, because it's so funny and irreverent and crazy. But if you're just thinking, oh, it's about this white abolitionist and blah, 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 then you completely miss this Black storyteller's work.
Yeah. And I mean,
you're judging it like it's some white storyteller's work, and you didn't even uncover the fact that that's really what it is and how beautiful it is.
Mm-hmm. No, James McBride just outdid himself. And it's funny because I usually read the book before I try to see whatever the movie is or something, if it's like that. But this time I didn't. And he was actually at our AURN Christmas party last year.
Was he really?
Yeah, he was. James was. And we had great time. I mean, it was a serious party. In fact, I think that was the last time I may have been on a plane, last December. But anyway, we were in New York and we had a great time, and he was talking about all of his other books. He did a whole presentation and we talked about this, but I knew this was coming out, and I said, let me see the show first on this one. So I can't wait when I really get through the entire series, which I've actually already seen, but I'm going to go get the book and now read the book. But everybody that's in the show says that you guys pretty much followed the book.
We did. I mean, I asked for more of it. I just thought the book was so beautifully rendered and gave you such a clear glimpse into the world, you know what I mean? And just the characters. I just loved this character and was, like, yeah, man, I'm happy to do it and grateful to be a part of bringing James's story to life.
It's interesting too, because your role is relatively small considered the whole span of the thing, but it is so pivotal because it's the role that, like I said, that gets you used to it. And I won't tell for folks who haven't seen it. I know a lot of people like myself, they've been following it, every week. And I'm like, oh gosh, I know how this is going to end, but I don't really want it to,
Right. That's exactly right. Right. I mean, that's what I love about it. You really fall in love with these characters and watching, Onion's transformation just is so, you know what I mean? But, at some point he must become a man.
Right.
And that, in the book and also in this telling of the book, it's just critical that that's what needed to happen. So he needed to run smack into life, and he'd been ducking and skirting around it. And so it was really clear to me just in the performance of it that he needed to hold a certain gravitas and that he needed to carry himself a certain way. Like I remember, I think of my great grandfather so much when I think of the Railman, because, his name was McKinley Cowan. and you called him Bud Kind.
Great name.
And McKinley Cowan ran a bootleg taxi service. So Black people weren't allowed to have taxi licenses back then.
Mm-hmm.
So he couldn't run a fare. So what he would do is pick you up, take you somewhere. And then if you ask, what I owe you, he'd say, whatever you can give me. Mm-hmm. And you were going to give him something.
Right.
That was clear.
Right.
But because he didn't charge a price, he didn't set a price, they could never get him. Mm-hmm. And that's how he operated outside the lines and used his car to be an entrepreneur and move people. Mm-hmm. But he had to gift the gab. So he's like the mayor, like everybody, like, you know what I mean? It was like everybody was always talking to my great granddad, right? That's just how he was. And then when he told me stuff, he would always lean down and whisper it to me, you know? And I just remember the sound of his voice, like the gravel in it, and just what he would be saying to me, and how much those things, how many of those things I'll use in my life today, how many of those things I've said to my own children, right? Right. And I really kind of was like, yeah, that's what I want him to feel like, but ominous, like you feel like, okay, the Underground Railroad just showed up. Ain't no telling what's going on over there. I don't really want to know what's going on over there. I just thought, Onion had yet to meet that side of life in The Good Lord Bird, and the Railman is his first encounter with the trickier, darkier, shadowier, I guess, parts of the world. So that's
and boy, does it, and you play it like that. You're, like I said, it's memorable. But that's what I said. You've done so many characters. Obviously people are still talking about Mr. Nancy, and and I got to tell you something. I remember when Sleepy Hollow came out, and you were one of the stars in that. That was one of my all-time favorite series. So you keep bringing it like that, and you were doing all this kind of stuff even before Jordan Peele introduced us to a lot of it.
Many moons before
Jordan Peele even. So it's kind of interesting because people don't often look at African-American actors in that way. And now they kind of do. Now we can seem to be able to do the gamut. Do you think that's true? Have we made progress in that area?
Let me put it to you this way. I would like to think so. What I find mostly is hilarious is how little attention we pay to our own history. Mm-hmm. Like, when I wasn't doing the Boys to the Hoods and Menace to Society type movies back in the day, people paid me though. I was a character, a buffoon, a clown. It was that was kind of the attitude, right? Like nobody, they didn't. I don't know that anybody cared about Dr. Lee or playing those type of characters. You know what I'm saying? So for me, but that's always been what my thing was, right? That's what I always loved. So it's always nice for me because I get to talk to someone like you, and I don't have to make it up, right? It's there.
Yep.
I got sent an interview from the Chicago Tribune that a friend of mine gave me from 2002, and the conversation was about diversity. That's what I was talking about. Yeah. So I'm like, I haven't really pulled up from this. It's the same conversation I've been having for 20 years. So, but I still feel like what's important about it is, despite what those barriers were, I tried to lay a track record that had nothing to do with any of that, wherein you get to see all these different types of characters that were not typical portrayals of Black men. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They were completely different portrayals of Black men, irrespective of even the stories that they were in. Those characters hopefully stood out as something completely different than what you might have previously seen in this, science fiction or whatever. And I try and approach it that way because for me, that's what it's about. If I'm going to go, this is the first learning I ever did doing press. Al Pacino told me this because he hated doing press. And I met him on an audition, and he was like one of those, "I like you, kid." And so, I was like, oh, okay. And he said he hated press, and he said, you you spend all this time trying to figure out the character, what secret the character is keeping, what's driving the character, what the character doesn't want you to know about him, all those things to make the character human. And then you try and find a way to bring that to life on camera. And then you go do press and they want you to sell it and talk about it. And you don't really know how to do that, right? Because what you do is a little different, right? So he's like, I hated it. I can't do it. He goes, you're actually good at that part. You're good at both parts of it. You can actually talk about it. And he said, but never give away your secret, but always try and point out that that's what you're trying to do, because you asking these people to come see you. And if they come see you and what they see is trash, then they're not going to come see you again. So the obligation you make when you do press is you're saying, I gave you my 100. I hope you enjoy that. That's all I was responsible for. And I enjoy the rest of this. That's my personal opinion. I hope you do too. Or I don't enjoy the rest of this. But I feel like that's the kind of agreement you make. So I really feel like that's kind of what I try and do. I don't know if I always succeed at it, but that's certainly the job.
Well, you did your job very well as the real man on this one. And I got it out, and I'll end it with one of the telling kind of moments in your performance on this, because this is one of my favorite episodes, was where you sit down and I guess you're kind of in the rail, because this whole thing is like very kind of, ethereal and dark and everything. And you light the cigar. Now, I don't know if I've ever seen in a movie or anything in that era where a Black man is that confident that he sits down and he lights a cigar.
Exactly.
It's those little moments like that, and you always nail it. You always nail it.
Thank you so much. I mean, that means the world to me to hear you say that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want everybody to watch Good Lord Bird. One last, what would you say to the audience about this particular episode that you want folks to know?
Good Lord Bird. Listen, this onion finally becomes a man.
And in a really cool, unique, and unexpected way too. I think.
Listen, James McBride, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, give him a big round of applause. And you know what, Orlando Jones, we're giving you a big applause too, because you always just bring it, darling. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Appreciate it.
Okay.